Ava Moretti thought tonight would be just another arranged blind date. Another stranger, another disappointment. But before the night was over, one unexpected encounter would change her life forever. Growing up, Ava believed she and her twin brother, Andrew, would always stay together. The two were inseparable. Where one went, the other followed. Holding his hand, Ava excitedly pulled Andrew along, convinced nothing could ever come between them. But that changed the day their father called Andrew over. He placed a hand on his son's shoulder and announced that from that day forward, Andrew would begin learning the family business. Confused, Ava begged to go with them. She pleaded for them not to leave her behind. Years passed, then tragedy struck. Ava stood silently beside Andrew's coffin as her father coldly declared that Andrew had taken his own life because he was weak. But Ava couldn't believe it. Andrew wasn't weak. Yet in the middle of that painful memory, she suddenly heard his voice asking if she was the one who had called him weak. The words echoed in her mind, and Ava jolted awake. Breathing heavily, she realized it had only been a dream. It had been years since she'd dreamed about Andrew. She couldn't understand why those memories had suddenly returned. Before she can dwell on it any longer, her phone alarm goes off, because tonight, she has a blind date. Downstairs, Ava joins the rest of the Moretti family. For the first time, we're introduced to the people closest to her mother, her siblings, and unlike Ava, everyone seems to fit perfectly into the family's expectations. Everyone except her. Because according to her family, Ava is the screw-up, the one who never follows the rules. As Ava prepares to leave, she runs into the one person everyone fears. Her father, Alessandro Moretti, the head of the Moretti family. One of the most powerful mafia bosses in America. He warns Ava not to embarrass the family, and as she leaves, she can't help thinking about Andrew. There was a time when she desperately wanted her father's approval. Now, she isn't even sure what she wants anymore. Later that evening, Ava arrives at the restaurant for her blind date. But the moment she meets him, she already knows this isn't going to work, and within minutes, she's mentally planning her escape. Then something unexpected happens. A waiter suddenly arrives with 2 drinks, neither of them ordered, apparently. They were sent by another customer, a mysterious man sitting elsewhere in the restaurant. At first, Ava tries to ignore it and focus on the conversation, but every time she looks away, she finds herself glancing back at him. And for some reason, she can't stop noticing him. Meanwhile, her date decides this is the perfect time to discuss a future marriage alliance between their families. Ava politely rejects the idea. Then, without wasting another second, she gets up and leaves. Because at this point, she'd rather deal with Angie's anger than spend another minute sitting there. As Ava storms through the hallway, she makes a decision. She's probably going to get yelled at by Angie anyway, so she might as well enjoy the rest of her night first. But before she can leave, her heel suddenly slips, and just as she's about to fall, a strong arm wraps around her waist from behind and catches her, then slowly turns around to see who it is, because standing behind her is the same mysterious stranger from the restaurant. Then he leans in slightly and asks a simple question. How about a date with me instead? And just like that, Ava's night becomes a whole lot more interesting. Instead of going home, she goes with the mysterious stranger from the restaurant. And the second they're alone together, the tension completely explodes. The guy immediately pins her against the wall and kisses her like he already owns the room. But Ava notices something terrifying almost instantly. A gun, hidden on his body. Ava immediately pushes him away and demands to know why he's carrying a weapon. But instead of panicking, the stranger calmly removes the gun and sets it aside like it's completely normal. Then he looks her dead in the eyes and says something that completely catches her off guard. You're safe as long as you're with me. And somehow that only makes him even more dangerous. Instead of leaving, Ava stays. And from that moment on, the night spirals completely out of control. Later, after showering, Ava realizes the stranger disappeared. But before she can even react, he suddenly grabs her from behind. After everything that happened, he never even asked for her name. But Ava has no intention of telling him who she really is. So instead, she gives him a fake name. Juliet? Then I guess that makes me Romeo. She makes it clear this is only a one-night thing, because according to him, most women change their minds by morning. That challenge completely flips the mood, and suddenly Ava decides she's done playing defense. And what starts as attraction quickly turns into a battle of dominance between 2 people who are both hiding dangerous secrets. The next morning, Ava wakes up covered in marks from the night before, but when she sees the stranger sleeping peacefully beside her, she can't help thinking how different he looks now. Last night, he felt like the devil himself. So before leaving, she writes him a note, basically treating him like the one-night stand. And when the stranger finally wakes up, he is completely stunned. Not because she left, but because no woman has ever treated him this way before. Instead of getting angry, he smirks. Then immediately calls a private investigator. Because now he wants to find the mysterious girl who called herself Juliet. The only problem? Everything she told him was probably fake. Still, he gives the investigator one order: track her down. And as he leaves the hotel surrounded by bodyguards and luxury cars, we finally realize something terrifying. Ava may have just spent the night with someone every bit as dangerous as her own mafia family. After spending the night with a complete stranger, Ava finally realizes something terrifying. He understands her better than her own family. But the moment she returns home, that feeling disappears instantly, because her mafia boss father slaps her across the face for disappearing all night. Then things get even worse. He places Ava on complete lockdown, and standing there alone inside that massive mansion, Ava realizes something heartbreaking. She felt safer with a dangerous stranger than inside her own home. But while Ava is trapped with her family, the man she spent the night with is dealing with problems of his own. Because this mysterious stranger isn't just some random flirt. His name is Nick Caponelli, heir to one of the most powerful mafia families in New York, a man feared across the entire underworld as the Young Lion. And right now, Nick has become completely obsessed with finding the girl who disappeared after one night. The problem? Ava gave him a fake name. Even Nick's assistants start making fun of him. Because apparently the great Nick Caponelli got paid after a one-night stand. But before Nick can continue searching for Ava, his father suddenly reveals something far more dangerous. There's a rat inside the Caponelli organization. Someone has been secretly stealing from the family's shipments, and now Nick has been ordered to find them. The final scene cuts to a rooftop high above the city. Helicopters unload shipments while armed men guard the entire operation. And standing there in the shadows is a man we've never seen before. Someone close enough to the Caponelli family to steal from them without getting caught. He stares at Ava's photo on his phone, then slowly smiles. And tonight, after tearing apart half the city trying to find her, he finally sees her again, standing on a yacht completely cornered by the man who almost destroyed her life. But what nobody realizes yet is that this single moment is about to change everything. The chapter opens with burning cars scattered across the street while smoke fills the night sky. And right in the middle of the chaos stands Nick Caponelli, completely calm. That alone tells you how terrifying this man really is. A few moments later, Leo arrives with information about the people responsible for the recent attacks. Apparently, they finally caught them, but there's a problem. The men they captured were just disposable pawns, meaning the real mastermind is still hiding somewhere in the city. Then Leo mentions something suspicious. A rich playboy named Kyle Archer has been throwing massive yacht parties every night. The second Nick hears that, he immediately decides they're going, almost like instinct is pulling him there. And honestly, he has no idea how right he is. Before they leave, Leo starts roasting Nick. Apparently, this man has spent an entire month obsessively searching for a woman named Juliet. Nick has literally been looking through photos of almost every woman in New York trying to find her. At this point, Leo genuinely thinks he's losing his mind, but Nick suddenly gets serious. He says this isn't curiosity anymore, and the way he says it. Yeah, this man is absolutely gone. Then the chapter cuts to the girl he's been searching for. Ava has been locked inside her family mansion for over a month. Not because she committed a crime. Not because she hurt someone, but because she disappeared for one night. That's how terrifying her family is. We see Ava quietly studying alone, while remembering how desperately she begged her father to let her out. She apologized, cried, promised to behave, nothing worked, and then we learned something even worse. The last time she disappointed her father, she was locked away for 6 months, because rumors spread through New York claiming the youngest daughter of the Moretti family was addicted to drugs. One scandal nearly destroyed the family reputation. And ever since then, Ava has basically been treated like a prisoner. But right when the chapter starts feeling depressing, Bella arrives, and this girl is pure chaos. Bella immediately drags Ava out of her misery, and convinces her to sneak out for the night. Ava obviously refuses at first. Honestly, she looks terrified just thinking about leaving the mansion again. Because the last time she disobeyed her family, they locked her away for months, but Bella keeps pushing until Ava finally gives in. And then Bella reveals where they're going. A yacht party. The exact same place Nick is heading to. But before that can even happen, someone from Ava's past suddenly appears and turns the entire night into a nightmare. The yacht is packed with rich elites, flashing lights, expensive drinks, and shady people everywhere. Bella is having the time of her life. Meanwhile, Ava looks like she regrets every decision she's made tonight. Then suddenly, someone steps in front of her, Jimmy, her ex-boyfriend. And the second Ava sees him, her entire expression changes. You can instantly tell this guy traumatized her. Jimmy starts mocking her immediately. He brings up her addiction. Mocks the way she used to beg for drugs, then this psychopath actually offers her another hit. Like he wants to drag her right back into the nightmare she escaped from. And honestly, this scene was hard to watch. Because for a moment, Ava almost breaks. But Jimmy doesn't stop. Instead, he grabs her, and that's when someone crushes his wrist from behind. Right after stepping onto the yacht, Nick suddenly notices someone in the crowd. Ava. For a moment, he just stares at her, almost like he can't believe she's real. But before he can even approach her, he notices Jimmy grabbing her arm, and instantly, Nick starts walking toward them. Meanwhile, Jimmy keeps talking, completely unaware of who's approaching him. Ava tries pulling away again, but Jimmy grabs her even harder, and then a hand suddenly crushes his wrist. Jimmy turns around and immediately freezes, because standing behind him is Nick. And then Nick says, "That's no way to treat a lady." But something tells me Nick finally finding Ava isn't the beginning of a love story. It's the beginning of absolute chaos. The chapter starts exactly where the last one ended. Jimmy grabs Ava's arm, and suddenly someone crushes his wrist. Then a calm voice says, "That's no way to treat a lady." Jimmy turns around and standing behind him is Nick, completely calm. At first, Jimmy still tries acting tough, but then he swings at Nick, which turns out to be the worst mistake possible, because Nick immediately pulls out a gun right there on the yacht. In front of everyone, no hesitation. And suddenly, Jimmy realizes this man genuinely does not care who's watching. After threatening Ava one last time, Jimmy finally runs away, leaving Ava completely alone with Nick. And the second these two look at each other, again, the entire atmosphere changes. Nick casually admits he's been searching all over New York just to see her again. Then Ava nervously asks why he wanted to find her, and Nick immediately reminds her that she literally paid money to sleep with him. The way this chapter suddenly shifts from tension into awkward flirting is actually hilarious. Ava looks completely embarrassed while Nick keeps teasing her non-stop. Nick suddenly grabs Ava's hand, then casually asks her out on a date. And for a second, Ava genuinely looks tempted, but then Ava suddenly remembers Jimmy, the manipulation, the addiction, the way she completely destroyed herself trying to love the wrong person, and slowly, she reminds him that their relationship was only supposed to be a one-night stand, nothing more. Because deep down, she's just terrified of repeating the same mistakes again. Meanwhile, Nick stands there silently watching her walk away. And for the first time in the series, this man genuinely looks disappointed. But before the chapter can even process that emotional damage, the chapter suddenly cuts to a tense mafia meeting discussing the Russians aggressively expanding their territory. One man proposes forming an alliance before things spiral out of control, but Nick's father clearly doesn't trust him at all. The tension gets so bad that multiple people literally point guns at each other during the meeting. Then suddenly the man proposes something even crazier. A marriage alliance. And the second those words are spoken, meanwhile, somewhere else, the chapter cuts to a horrifying blonde man torturing someone while casually talking about the alliance proposal. And honestly, this guy feels terrifying. Because unlike Nick, he looks completely unstable. At first, Nick thought she was just another beautiful woman. Then she disappeared. A month later, he still couldn't get her out of his head. And the more he tried to forget her, the worse it got. Nick Caponelli met someone he couldn't understand, and that might have been the biggest mistake either of them could make. The chapter opens with Nick sitting alone at a bar, thinking back to the first night he met Ava. At first, it wasn't anything special, just a random woman he happened to notice. But the more he watched her, the harder she became to ignore. She wasn't acting like everyone else. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, and when someone tried helping her, she made it clear she didn't need saving. And from that point on, he couldn't stop looking at her. One moment, Ava seemed fragile. The next moment, she was fearless. Sometimes she looked completely lost. Nothing about her made sense, and somehow that only made Nick more interested. But then the chapter reveals something even crazier. Nick isn't just remembering her, he's been actively searching for her for an entire month, looking through photos. And according to everyone around him, he's completely lost his mind. After waking up the morning after their encounter, Nick discovers Ava left before he could even speak to her. All she left behind was a note and a stack of cash. The realization hits immediately. She basically treated him like a gigolo. Nick takes that personally. Most women chase him. Ava did the exact opposite. The story then returns to the yacht party. The same night, Nick finally finds her again. But the second he gets closer, he realizes something is different. When Ava tries to walk away, Nick stops her, not because he wants another one-night stand, but because he genuinely wants to know her. And judging by Ava's reaction, that was the last thing she expected him to say. Nick then hands Ava his number and tells her to call anytime. Then he finally walks away, leaving Ava completely speechless. And that's when the chapter delivers its most important moment. Because for the first time, everything becomes clear to Nick. He wants her, but Ava doesn't want him. And somehow that only makes her harder to forget. Because what started as curiosity has now become something much more dangerous. As Ava walks out of class, a bright red sports car pulls up in front of the campus. Students immediately stop to stare, and leaning against the car is Nick, completely shocked. Ava demands to know how he even found her. Nick casually smiles. "I looked up your name." Before Ava can even react, the students around them start whispering, completely embarrassed. She reminds Nick that he told her to call him. Nick simply smiles. "I told you to call. I never said I wouldn't come find you." Ava gives up trying to argue. She shoves him toward the car, just to escape the growing crowd. The moment they get inside, Nick notices she clearly doesn't want to be there. He jokingly admits he actually had to work up the courage to come see her. Ava rolls her eyes to her. He still seems like nothing more than a shameless playboy. As they drive away, Nick finally introduces himself properly, then casually starts listing everything he knows about her, even the university she attends. Ava immediately panics. Thankfully, he still doesn't know she's actually Ava Moretti. She warns him that her father is an incredibly dangerous man, but instead of getting intimidated, Nick just laughs. Eventually, they arrive at a horse ranch. The moment Ava sees the horses, her entire mood changes. Nick explains that this is his family's vacation home, a place he used to visit with his younger sibling whenever life became overwhelming. One horse immediately catches Ava's attention. Nick warns her that it's known for having a terrible temper, but the moment Ava gently strokes it, the horse instantly calms down. Even Nick looks surprised, seeing how comfortable she is. He asks if she'd like to ride. Ava excitedly agrees, although she assumes they'll ride separately. Nick has other plans. Since she's never ridden before, he insists they'll ride together. Before she can complain, the horse suddenly takes off. Ava panics, but Nick calmly reassures her, "You'll always be safe with me." Slowly, she opens her eyes. She's greeted by a breathtaking sunset stretching across the countryside. Nick quietly explains that whenever he felt trapped, he came here because riding made him feel free, almost like he was flying. He thought she deserved to feel that freedom too. The words leave Ava speechless, because somehow Nick always seems to understand exactly what she needs. Nick asks about her dream. Ava admits she wants to become a lawyer, even though her father only allowed it because it could benefit the family to him. She's still nothing more than someone to marry off for political gain. Nick listens quietly, then smiles. "I think I know the solution." Ava looks at him, confused. Nick doesn't hesitate. "Date me, Ava. I'll set you free." That night, Ava returns home after spending the day with Nick. She collapses onto her bed. But sleep is the last thing on her mind. Nick's words keep replaying in her head. "Date me, Ava. I'll set you free." Then another thought suddenly hits her. Wait, does this mean they're actually dating before she knows it? She's already thinking about what to wear on their next date. And that's when she realizes something. She's genuinely fallen for him. The moment doesn't last long. Her bedroom door suddenly swings open. Standing there is her father, Alessandro Moretti. He demands to know why she came home so late. Ava quickly blames school. Her father isn't convinced. Instead, he orders her to clear tomorrow evening. She's attending an important meeting, and she'd better not be late or underdressed. The next day, Ava receives the location, 6 o'clock, 19th floor, C Hotel, as she heads there. She can't stop wondering why her father suddenly wants her involved. He's never invited her to one of his meetings before. Maybe this is finally her chance to prove herself. Holding on to that hope, she steps into the elevator. Just before the doors close, someone calls out, "Hold the door." It's Nick of all the places they could meet. He somehow ends up in the same elevator. Ava immediately accuses him of stalking her again. Nick laughs, but after seeing how she's dressed, he assumes she's meeting another man. He actually looks jealous. Ava can't help teasing him. "I'm meeting my father." "Why would I meet another man when I already have you?" Nick instantly relaxes, leaning against her shoulder. He quietly admits she had him worried. Nick gently kisses her neck. He softly asks, "Can I kiss you?" Then kisses her anyway, this time. Ava doesn't pull away. The elevator keeps climbing, while the two completely lose themselves in the moment. Finally, the elevator reaches the 19th floor. The doors slowly open. Standing outside is Alessandro Moretti. Ava's heart almost stops. She immediately tries to explain, but before she can, her father calmly looks at Nick. "It's been a while, Nick." Nick nods respectfully. "It's good to see you, Don Moretti." Ava can only stare in disbelief. Nick knows her father? Then Alessandro drops the biggest bombshell yet. "Say hello, Ava. This is the future head of the Caponelli family, and the man you're going to marry." A few days earlier, Nick learns he'll be entering a political marriage. His father explains that the Russian mafia is expanding to strengthen their position. The American mafia families decide to form a marriage alliance. Nick doesn't argue, as the future head of the Caponelli family. He's always known this day would come. Later, Leo asks the obvious question. "What about Juliet?" Nick simply smiles. "I'm going to sabotage the wedding. If my fiancé runs away, we can't get married." But beneath the jokes, Nick admits something he's never said before. His future was decided long before he was born. Then he remembers Ava, the promise he made. "I'll set you free." Only now does he realize why those words came so naturally. When Ava talked about living in a cage, he saw himself more than anything. He wanted to give her the freedom neither of them had. The story returns to the present. Nick finally learns who his fiancée is. It feels like fate has given him a second chance for Ava. It's the exact opposite. She stands there speechless, while Nick's father and Ava's father casually discuss their marriage, as if her opinion doesn't matter. When Nick's father asks whether she's happy, her own father answers instead. He admits he never even told her about the engagement, because in his eyes, she doesn't need an explanation, she just needs to obey, watching everything unfold. Nick finally understands how little freedom Ava has. Unable to take it anymore, Ava apologizes and rushes outside. Nick immediately follows. He explains that he only found out about the marriage a few days ago. He had no idea she was the bride, but Ava can't believe him. From her perspective, nothing makes sense. Nick appeared at the restaurant, found her university, learned everything about her, kept showing up wherever she went. How could any of that possibly be a coincidence? To Ava, there's only one answer. He planned everything. Tears begin running down her face. She tells Nick she trusted him. I don't care if you're telling the truth. Leave me alone. I never want to see you again. Then she walks away, leaving Nick standing there, unable to stop her. Later that night, Ava sits alone at a bar. She keeps replaying everything that happened, wondering if any of it was ever real. Then someone suddenly sits beside her. He orders a Black Russian, before calmly asking, "So, you don't like your fiancé?" Ava freezes. The stranger smiles. "My name is Alec Kasnikov. It's a pleasure to meet you." The story picks up exactly where the last chapter ended. The mysterious blonde man introduces himself. "My name is Alec Kasnikov." Ava has never seen him before, yet somehow, he already knows exactly who she is. Then drops a name that completely catches Ava off guard. The Undertaker, confused. Ava asks who he's talking about. Alec smiles. "Your fiancé, Nick Caponelli." According to him, Nick isn't just the heir to the Caponelli family, he's one of the most feared men in the mafia world, a man known as the Undertaker. Ava is left speechless. Alec notices the confusion on her face, then tells her she's only seen the side of Nick he wanted her to see. If she really wants the truth, she should ask him about the secret he's been hiding, according to Alec. Once Ava learns that secret, she'll never agree to marry Nick. Before he can say anything else, someone suddenly grabs him and throws him aside. Nick. The two mafia heirs lock eyes immediately. Alec mocks him, asking if he's really going to let another man comfort his own fiancée. Nick loses his temper and steps forward, but before the fight can begin, Ava gets between them. She grabs Nick's arm, then quietly says, "We're leaving," as they walk away. Alec calls out one last time. Don't forget to ask him about the secret. Inside the car, Nick immediately tells Ava to stay away from Alec. But this time, Ava refuses to stay quiet. She reminds Nick that everyone knew about the engagement except her. A complete stranger seems to know more about his life than she does. After pulling the car over, Nick finally apologizes. He admits he never stopped to think about how all of this looked from Ava's perspective. Then, he gently takes her hand and places it against his chest. His heart is racing. For the first time, Ava realizes something unexpected. Nick isn't angry, he's scared. Nick starts from the beginning. A few days before they reunited, his father informed him about the arranged marriage. By then, he had already fallen in love with Ava. His original plan was to ruin the wedding. But everything changed. The moment he discovered the bride was her, he was so happy. He never stopped to think about how she would feel, looking directly into her eyes. Nick tells her the one thing he's wanted to say all along. "I never lied to you. My feelings for you. They're real." The moment Ava returned home, her father struck her across the face so hard that she collapsed onto the floor. Furious, Alessandro demanded to know how she dared embarrass him during such an important meeting. According to him, she had made a complete fool of the Moretti family in front of the Caponellis. Ava finally spoke up. She said that all he ever cared about was the family's reputation. He had never once cared how she felt, or why she had walked away from the engagement before she could finish. Another slap silenced her. Alessandro grabbed her by the face and declared that she would marry whether she wanted to or not. The decisions belonged to him alone, and Ava's feelings meant nothing. She should simply be grateful that he had raised and provided for her all these years. Ava didn't fight back. She told herself she was used to this. To her father, she was nothing more than a beautiful doll. She almost convinced herself that resisting was pointless. Then, Nick's words echoed through her mind. He had told her that his feelings for her were real. The memory shifted back to their conversation after meeting Alec. Ava had bitterly asked what any of it mattered now. But Nick calmly reminded her that no one could force that choice. The only thing that truly mattered was what she wanted. Back in the present, she declared that the most important part of any marriage was how she felt. Then she apologized, before firmly stating that she would marry the person she wanted. when she wanted. Alessandro's expression immediately darkened as he removed his watch. He decided it was time to teach his daughter another lesson. The following morning, Nick arrived outside Ava's house carrying a flower. The moment he spotted her, he happily ran over to greet her. He offered to drive her to school, knowing she had gotten home late the previous night. But as he reached for her, he noticed the bruises covering her wrist. His smile disappeared. Quietly, he asked what had happened. Ava immediately pulled her hand away. Then she looked him straight in the eyes. Nick had once promised to set her free. Now, she asked him to prove it, if his feelings were truly real. Then, she wanted him to free her from the life she had been trapped in. Nick didn't answer with words. Instead, he took her somewhere completely unexpected, an amusement park. Ava looked around in confusion, wondering what any of this had to do with freedom. Ava screamed the entire way. When it finally stopped, she accused Nick of trying to kill her, laughing. Nick pointed out that she had survived her very first roller coaster. Then he asked if she had ever been to an amusement park before. Ava quietly admitted that she hadn't. Her father had always considered places like this a waste of time. The two spent the rest of the day exploring the park together, for the first time in years. Ava laughed without worrying about her family's expectations. As the day came to an end, Nick noticed that her feet were sore from walking. He gently removed her shoes, apologizing for not realizing how much pain they had caused. Ava insisted she was fine, but as she watched a happy family walking together, she quietly admitted that she sometimes wished she had been born into an ordinary family. Maybe then, she could have enjoyed simple moments like this much more often. Nick smiled. Then he asked her why they couldn't build a normal family together instead, pointing out that a mafia heir hardly sounded normal. But Nick painted a different picture, a quiet life, morning kisses, walks on the beach, picnics, amusement parks. For the first time, Ava found herself believing that kind of future might actually be possible. As they prepared to leave, Nick suddenly lifted Ava into his arms. She protested, insisting she could walk on her own. But Nick refused, and he wasn't about to let her suffer then. He suddenly stopped. Someone was standing directly in their path. The stranger smiled, then casually asked if they'd enjoyed their date. Ava stared at him in confusion. Babe. The single word left her completely speechless. Nick immediately recognized the woman, Jane, before he could say anything else. She stormed over and kicked him square in the leg. Ava watched in complete disbelief. Jane angrily demanded to know why Nick's phone had been turned off all day, while she had been buried under mountains of work. Realizing she had an audience, Jane instantly changed her attitude. She cheerfully grabbed Ava's hand, complimented her beauty, and jokingly suggested she dump Nick and come home with her instead. Nick immediately shouted her name, within seconds. The two were arguing like children, watching the chaos unfold. Ava couldn't make sense of any of it. After letting out a long sigh, Nick decided it was finally time. Then he introduced her to his family. The scene shifted to a nearby restaurant. Ava quietly wondered if she'd accidentally been invited to an eating contest. Nick finally explained everything. Jane wasn't his girlfriend at all. They had simply grown up together, and he considered her a little sister. The young man sitting beside them, Leo, was Nick's younger brother. Both of them helped him with his work. Hearing that, Ava couldn't help comparing them to her own family. If they were all part of the mafia, why did they seem so normal? As the meal continued, a waitress arrived with champagne. Seeing the restaurant jogged Ava's memory. This was the exact place where she and Nick had first met. Curious, she asked if he came here often. Nick casually revealed the truth. He didn't just visit the restaurant, he owned it. In fact, he owned the entire hotel. Ava stared at him in disbelief, explaining that Leo handled most of the business while he only stopped by occasionally. Still, for some reason, he had felt strangely compelled to visit that night. Now he believed fate had brought him there, so he could meet Ava. Before the romantic moment could last, Jane immediately pretended to gag. Leo joined in, teasing Nick mercilessly. He joked that this sweet version of Nick didn't even resemble the ruthless boss who had practically worked them to death while searching for Ava. Nick quickly denied everything, before the siblings started bickering all over again. Watching the three of them argue, Ava suddenly burst into laughter. For the first time, she realized something. A normal mafia family really did exist. Elsewhere, someone else was having a much worse day. Ava's ex-boyfriend wandered through a dark alley, desperately trying to buy chocolate. Dealer after dealer refused to sell to him. One finally admitted the truth. Someone had warned everyone not to do business with him. The dealer fled before saying anything more. Ava's ex immediately thought of Nick. He realized Nick's influence reached far beyond what he had imagined, just as frustration began taking over. Another familiar face stepped out of the shadows. Alec, seeing an opportunity. Alec offered him a chocolate package to distribute. If he helped move it, he could keep part of the profits. Blinded by desperation, Ava's ex accepted the offer without hesitation. After the chaotic dinner with Nick's family, the two found themselves standing quietly by the pier. For the first time all evening, everything was peaceful. As Ava admired the glittering city lights, she couldn't help but whisper, "Wow." Nick smiled apologetically. He was still embarrassed about the disaster that dinner had become, but Ava simply laughed. She told him she'd had an amazing time. It was the liveliest family dinner she'd ever experienced. What surprised her most was how different their families were. Both of them had been born into mafia families. Yet Nick's home was filled with laughter, unlike hers. Ava quietly asked him something she'd always wondered. "Don't you resent it? It's not like we ever asked to be born into a mob family." Nick gazed out across the water for a moment. His smile disappeared. He admitted that he used to hate it as a child. He constantly wondered why he had been born into such a terrifying family. He wanted to run away again and again, but eventually, he realized there was no point hating something he couldn't change. Instead, he chose to become strong enough to protect the people he loved. Nick awkwardly laughed it off and suggested they head home before it got cold, but Ava stopped him. She told him how much she admired him, living with that burden, yet still choosing kindness, made him far stronger than he realized. Those words completely caught Nick off guard before he could think twice. He reached out, gently pulled Ava closer, and asked the question he'd been holding back. "Can I kiss you?" "I don't think I can contain myself anymore." Unfortunately, they weren't as alone as they thought, back at the Moretti estate. Two familiar faces had witnessed everything: Bella and Ava's older brother, Vincent. Bella watched the couple with endless excitement. "Ava has a boyfriend?" Bella quickly corrected him. "He isn't just a boyfriend. He's her fiancé." Vincent froze. "Ava's getting married?" When Ava finally arrived home, Bella wasted no time teasing her. She excitedly asked what she liked most about Nick. His looks, his money, his family, or maybe all three. After all, he was Nick Caponelli, the moment Vincent heard that name. The mug in his hand slipped from his grasp. He rushed over, grabbed Ava by the shoulders, and demanded to know if their father had arranged the marriage. Ava, confused by his sudden reaction, simply asked him to let go. Elsewhere, their father, Alessandro, was speaking on the phone. He calmly assured the caller that everything was proceeding according to plan. The marriage would happen. The mysterious caller mocked him. To them, he sounded less like a father, and more like a businessman negotiating another deal. Alessandro coldly dismissed the accusation before ending the call. Moments later, Vincent burst into Alessandro's office without knocking. He demanded to know if the rumors were true. Was Ava really being forced to marry Nick Caponelli? Alessandro didn't deny it. It was an alliance, the only way to stop the growing threat posed by the Russian mafia. Vincent didn't care about politics. He argued that Ava deserved to know the truth before being pushed into such a marriage. But Alessandro refused. Nothing would change. If that's the case, maybe it's better she never finds out then. He revealed the heartbreaking secret that had been buried for years. The man responsible for killing Ava's twin brother Andrew was none other than Nick Caponelli. Inside a dimly lit warehouse, Alek Asnikov's men reported that everything had gone according to plan. Most of their operation had already been completed. His subordinate almost mentioned orders from their boss in Russia, but immediately caught himself and apologized. Before anyone could say another word, the warehouse door slammed open. Everyone turned toward the entrance. Alek welcomed him with a grin. "Well, if it isn't the Undertaker, what brings you to our humble establishment?" Nick calmly tossed a bag onto the floor. Alek glanced at the bag and smirked. "Don't you think that's a little excessive? Cross us again, and next time it'll be your own hand in that bag." He suddenly stepped forward, pressing a knife dangerously close to Nick's neck. "Next time, I'm playing for keeps." Within seconds, both gangs reached for their weapons. The entire room fell silent. Nick stared directly into Alek's eyes. "So, are you declaring war?" Alek pretended to think about it. "I don't know." Nick reminded him that starting a war on Caponelli territory would only end badly for the Russians. Alek agreed. For now, they were at a disadvantage. But a full-scale war wasn't the only option, sometimes. All it took was striking someone's weakest point. Alek casually mentioned Ava. Nick's expression changed instantly. "You touch her, and you won't live long enough to regret it." Alek laughed. "See? You become an angry dog whenever someone mentions your fiancé. But I'm not the one you should be worried about." He brought up Alessandro Moretti instead, a man infamous for his cruelty, even toward his own family then. He deliberately began bringing up Ava's painful past. "That's enough. It's none of your business." He gave Alek one final warning. "The next time we meet, it'll be war." Without another word, Nick turned around and walked away, watching him leave. Alek couldn't stop smiling. I've barely started having fun, but what Alek had said refused to leave Nick's mind. Moments later, he called Ava. She answered almost immediately. He asked where she was. Ava told him she was simply reading a book in the garden. The call suddenly went quiet. A moment later, she looked up. Nick was already standing right in front of her, breathing heavily. He immediately wrapped his arms around her. Nick held onto her even tighter. "Come live with me. I already have everything ready." She could feel him trembling for the first time. Nick genuinely looked afraid. Nick looked into her eyes as if he wanted to say something important, before he could finish. Familiar voice interrupted them. Alessandro Moretti had arrived. The atmosphere changed instantly. Ava tried to explain, but Nick calmly stepped forward. "Don Moretti, may I have a moment of your time? I'd like to ask you something." Whatever Nick was about to say could change everything. Inside Alessandro's office, Nick stood before him with clenched fists. His voice was calm, but his anger was impossible to hide. "Is it true? Did you really lock Ava up?" Alessandro didn't even flinch. "So what if I did?" Nick stared at him in disbelief. "How? How could you do something like that to your own daughter?" Alessandro's expression remained cold. "How pathetically sentimental of you. Ava was no better than a beast then. She was drowning in drugs and booze every night. She couldn't even recognize her own parents. Our family's reputation had already been hit hard after the disgraceful death of one of my heirs. And Ava was destroying what little honor we had left. I was only doing what was necessary as the head of this family. Give me a break. You call locking up and beating someone who was broken after losing her brother. Doing what was necessary as her father. You should have comforted her." Alessandro dismissed Nick's outrage as nothing more than pointless sentiment. But Nick had already made up his mind. He told Alessandro that Ava was leaving with him, and that he refused to leave her in that house any longer. Alessandro immediately objected. In his eyes, Ava still belonged to the Moretti family. She was his daughter, and only he had the right to decide her future. Nick stopped him before he could finish. "Ava isn't anyone's property." With that, he slammed the office door behind him and walked away. Ava had been anxiously waiting outside. The moment Nick stepped out, she rushed toward him. Instead of explaining what had happened, Nick gently took her hand. He told her everything had been settled, and that she was coming home with him. Ava was completely caught off guard. She tried asking what had happened inside the office, but Nick could only apologize. He admitted that he had finally learned everything her father had done to her, and wished he had known the truth much sooner. Ava immediately tried to calm him down. She didn't want the argument with her father to become even worse because of her. Nick refused to change his decision, as far as he was concerned. She wasn't spending another night in the Moretti mansion. Not long afterward, the two arrived outside Nick's house. Before getting out of the car, Nick asked whether there was anything she needed, but instead of answering, Ava quietly opened the door and stepped outside. Nick immediately followed after her, confused. He asked where she was going. Ava finally stopped and turned around. She understood why Nick had been so desperate to protect her, but there was something he hadn't realized. He kept criticizing Alessandro for trying to control her, yet he had just done the very same thing. Without asking what she wanted, he'd made every decision for her. Nick fell silent. Even so, he admitted he couldn't compromise when it came to her safety. Ava knew his intentions had come from a place of love, but she still needed time to sort through her feelings. She told him she'd cool off on her own. Nick remained where he stood, watching her disappear into the distance. As Ava wandered through the streets alone, her emotions became impossible to sort out. Only a few hours earlier, she had been looking forward to spending the day with Nick. Now, everything had fallen apart. She knew his intentions had been good, but she couldn't stop feeling frustrated by the way he'd taken away her choice. Then, a familiar voice suddenly called out from behind her. She froze, standing there. It was Jimmy, her ex-boyfriend. Jimmy immediately noticed Ava's sad mood and wasted no time making a disgusting offer. He suggested that spending the night with him would make all of her problems disappear. For a brief moment, Ava remembered the person she used to be. Back then, she would have accepted an escape from reality no matter who offered it. But not anymore. She calmly removed Jimmy's hand from her shoulder, looked him straight in the eyes, and admitted she couldn't believe she'd ever dated trash like him. Humiliated by Ava's rejection, Jimmy completely lost his temper. Just as he was about to lash out, another man stepped between them. It was Alec, the mysterious stranger Ava had met at the hotel. "You should leave right now." Alec made it clear that Jimmy isn't being asked. Jimmy swallowed his pride and walked away. Once they were alone, Ava questioned why Alec had helped her. Instead of denying it, Alec admitted he'd looked into her background. He already knew she was the youngest daughter of the Moretti family, and that everyone saw her as the family's biggest disappointment. Seeing the sadness on her face, Alec asked if it still bothered her. Ava confessed she was tired of being treated like a hopeless case. No matter how hard she tried to move forward, her past always seemed to define who she was. Her words triggered Alec's memories for a moment. He remembered the cruelty and violence that had shaped his own life. Then he told Ava something unexpected. Compared to the monsters he'd known, she had done almost nothing wrong. He'd seen criminals betray their own families, sell out their closest friends, and destroy anyone standing in the way of profit. Compared to people like that, do you think any of them are in any position to judge a mere addict? Ava couldn't help but laugh. She asked if that had been his strange way of comforting her. Alec insisted he was only telling the truth. The conversation soon shifted, curious about his accent. Ava jokingly asked if he traveled all the way from Russia just to stop her engagement. Alec played along, asking if she'd cancel the wedding if he did. Ava smiled. She reminded him that the decision wasn't hers to make. If anyone could stop the marriage, it would have to be her father. Realizing it was getting late, Ava decided it was finally time to leave. Alec teased her, saying he'd expected someone with her reputation to stay out much longer and hoped their paths would never cross again. Instead of saying goodbye, Alec suddenly leaned forward and kissed her, completely caught off guard. Ava could only stare at him in disbelief. Alec simply smiled, telling her that if she ever wanted to run away again, she should call him. She still couldn't figure out what kind of person Alec really was. Meanwhile, Alec watched her disappear into the distance, and for the first time, he admitted something to himself. He wanted her. Not long afterward, Ava finally arrived at Nick's penthouse. She found Nick sitting alone in the dark, waiting for her. Trying to avoid another fight, Nick quietly told her to get some rest. He believed they should talk once they'd both calmed down. Nick looked at her carefully. She insisted she wasn't drunk, and accused him of treating her like she still had a problem, without saying another word. Nick pulled out his phone. On the screen was a photo of Alec kissing Ava. The room instantly fell silent. Trying to calm the situation, Ava explained what had happened. Jimmy had been bothering her at the bar. Alec had stepped in, forced Jimmy to leave, and afterward they'd only exchanged a few words. To her the kiss meant nothing, and she insisted Nick had nothing to worry about. Those words only made him even angrier. Nothing to worry about. Ava had no idea how close she'd come to real danger. Nick blurted out that she could have died, realizing he was too emotional to think clearly. Nick changed his mind. He decided they would talk in the morning instead, but Ava refused to let it go. She demanded that he tell her the truth. Instead, Nick pleaded with her. He admitted he didn't want to keep arguing, and begged her to wait until tomorrow. Feeling hurt and completely misunderstood, Ava stormed into the bedroom, slammed the door shut, and finally let herself break down. She kept telling herself it was nothing, even though deep down, it hurt far more than she wanted to admit. The next morning, Nick prepared himself to apologize. Coffee in hand, he knocked on Ava's bedroom door when she didn't answer. He quietly let himself inside, instead of finding her asleep. He found her burning with a high fever, lost in a feverish dream. Ava felt trapped. Her body was heavy. She could barely move, and all she could think about was how she always seemed to disappoint everyone around her. She wondered if this was her punishment for hurting Nick. Then, she felt something cool against her forehead. Nick had stayed by her side the entire time after calling a doctor. He made sure she received treatment. When Ava finally woke up, she thought everything had been a dream. Surely Nick had already gone to work. Instead, she walked into the kitchen and found him wearing an apron. Ava immediately felt guilty. She apologized for everything. She'd walked out on him, gotten photographed with another man. To her, she was nothing but trouble. Nick quickly shut that idea down. She wasn't a burden. If anything, he was the one who owed her an apology. He admitted he'd lost control the previous night, because he was terrified after learning she'd met Alec Asnikov. Hearing that, Ava finally confessed what she'd been thinking all along. She believed Nick was ashamed of her, ashamed that she'd once been addicted to drugs, ashamed that she couldn't stand up to her father. Nick stared at her in disbelief. Then he realized something important. Don Moretti had never told Ava the truth. She knew the Asnikovs were another mafia family, but nothing beyond that. Nick asked her to finish her breakfast, because it was finally time for her to learn exactly who Alec Asnikov was, and why getting involved with him could put her life in unimaginable danger. Holding Ava close on the sofa, Nick asked her a simple question. Did she know why her father wanted them to get married? When Ava admitted she didn't, Nick finally told her everything. The criminal underworld of America had long been controlled by two powerful families, the Caponellis and Morettis. But now, a third organization was trying to seize control. The Asnikovs, a ruthless Russian mafia family, unlike their families. The Asnikovs had no limits. They had no problem targeting innocent people, or using torture to get what they wanted to stop them. The Caponellis and Moretti's planned to unite through marriage. Nick then revealed why Alec kept approaching her. It wasn't because Alec was interested in Ava. It was because she had become Nick's greatest weakness. Nick warned. Alec wouldn't hesitate to kill her. Only then did Ava realize why Nick had been so angry the night before. As Ava thought back to everything Alec had said, she realized he'd been lying to her from the very beginning. Nick apologized. He admitted he had dragged her into this life without asking for her permission. But even now, he believed protecting her was worth it. Ava worried that keeping her away from her father would damage the alliance between their families. Nick didn't care. Politics no longer mattered. The only thing that mattered was keeping the woman he loved safe. The confession caught Ava completely off guard. Love? How could Nick love someone he'd barely known? She insisted he didn't really know her. She was indecisive, a coward, unpredictable. Surely she wasn't the person he imagined. Instead of arguing, Nick laughed softly. Not because he found her ridiculous, but because she was repeating exactly what she'd told him the day they first met. That every relationship failed because people always wanted her to become someone she wasn't. Then, for the first time, Nick let his own mask fall. He confessed that he barely slept every night. He was haunted by the terrible things he had to do for his family. The violence, the bloodshed, the innocent people caught in the middle. His entire life felt like an endless nightmare. He blamed himself for everything happening to Ava, if he had truly loved her. He should have ended the engagement long ago, but he couldn't, because being with her made him feel like an ordinary man in his eyes. Ava refused to let him carry that burden alone. Nick had changed her life for the first time. Someone saw her as more than Don Moretti's daughter or the family's disappointment. He saw Ava. Simply as Ava, she didn't want some grand fairy tale. Morning kisses, evening walks, picnics, amusement parks. A future built from small moments together. She asked Nick to promise they would experience those things, no matter what happened, instead of answering with words. Nick kissed her, though Ava still feared getting hurt for the first time. She believed everything might be okay. Later, Ava called her father. She calmly informed him that she had decided to stay with Nick, and that they would let him know when they chose an engagement date. Don Moretti exploded with rage. He reminded Ava that he decided where she lived, not her. Before Ava could answer, Nick took the phone. He simply told Don Moretti that Ava would stay wherever she wanted. Then he hung up. Humiliated, Don Moretti smashed the phone in fury. His original plan had been to use the alliance with the Caponellis to gain leverage over them. But now, it looked like he was losing control instead. Cornered, he made a decision that would change everything. He picked up another phone and called the one man he should never have trusted, Alec Asnikov. Don Moretti asked if Alec's previous offer still stood. Would the Asnikovs still hand over most of the Caponellis' territory? If he helped them, Alec smiled. Of course the offer still stood. The chapter opens with Nick and Ava sharing an intimate moment together in the shower. Their passion continues until exhaustion finally overtakes Ava. The scene then shifts to the following morning. Ava slowly wakes up in bed, confused about how she ended up there. She wonders if she passed out during the night before quietly leaving the bedroom to ask Nick about what happened. However, before she can find him, she is greeted by Jane instead. Jane cheerfully tells Ava that Nick had asked her to keep her company. Apparently, he woke Jane up at the crack of dawn saying that an urgent matter had come up and he needed to leave immediately. Although Ava insists that she can take care of herself, Jane isn't convinced. She reminds Ava that Nick is the same man who searched all across New York for an entire month, just to find her. Hearing that, Ava realizes Jane has a point. Just as Ava tries to retreat back to her room, Jane quickly grabs her. Since Nick isn't around, she decides it's the perfect opportunity for the two of them to spend some quality time together. Before Ava even realizes what's happening, Jane has already turned the day into a fashion show. One outfit after another, Jane enthusiastically dresses Ava up, insisting that everything looks perfect on her. Watching Jane's excitement makes Ava feel strangely nostalgic. It reminds her of the countless times Bella used to play dress-up with her. As the fun settles down, Jane suddenly becomes more serious. She admits that she was worried when she first heard Nick would be entering a marriage of convenience. Nick had always been the type to sacrifice himself for the sake of his family, but marriage felt like an entirely different level of responsibility. To Jane's surprise, though, Nick genuinely looks happy. She can't even remember the last time she saw him smile so sincerely. That is why she thanks Ava from the bottom of her heart and asks her to continue taking good care of him. Ava smiles warmly, explaining that there's no need for thanks, because being with Nick makes her happy as well. Satisfied with Ava's answer, Jane announces that it's finally time to leave. Curious, Ava asks where they're going, but Jane simply tells her it's somewhere special. The scene shifts once again. After getting out of the car, Ava is immediately captivated by the breathtaking sunset stretching across the horizon. She wonders why Jane suddenly brought her to such a beautiful place. Jane simply smiles. Then she reveals the real reason, because someone asked her to. Standing quietly behind Ava is Nick. Surprised, Ava turns around in disbelief. She thought he had urgent business to take care of, but Nick calmly explains that he finished everything earlier than expected. After a brief pause, Nick nervously asks if the two of them can take a walk together. As they stroll through the familiar scenery, Nick reminds Ava that this is the same place where they once went horseback riding together. The memory immediately comes rushing back to Ava. Nick admits that he originally considered proposing at an expensive restaurant or luxurious hotel. In the end, however, he realized that choosing a place filled with memories meant far more than any extravagant location ever could. Then, with his heart racing, Nick kneels down before Ava. Taking out a ring, he finally asks the question he has wanted to ask for so long. Even though their marriage was arranged by their families, Nick wanted to give Ava a proper proposal. He tells her that he doesn't want her to marry him simply because circumstances forced her to. Instead, he wants her to choose him, because she truly wants to spend the rest of her life with him. Nick even reveals that the so-called urgent business from earlier was nothing more than an excuse to buy himself enough time to prepare everything before the flowers wilted. Growing increasingly nervous, he quickly tells Ava that she doesn't have to say yes if she isn't ready. Before he can finish speaking, Ava gently kisses him. With tears of happiness in her eyes, she gives him the answer he has been hoping for. Yes, she will marry him. A brand new chapter of Nick and Ava's relationship is about to begin.